Folks, I reported live inside the CHAZ 72 hours a couple of weeks ago. That was 3 a.m. last night, or 3 a.m. this morning, in there. The report's now out of Daily Mail's got a report up on this. Teen 16 is killed and 14-year-old is wounded after Seattle CHAZ zone protesters fire into their Jeep as they drove towards the barricades at 3 a.m. Those inside the cop-free area say they acted in self-defense. A video shows a man yelling, "Oh, you're not dead yet?" I just showed that video. Police say they are investigating after witnesses reported seeing a white Jeep SUV near a makeshift barrier around the Capitol Hill autonomous zone at around 3 a.m. on Monday, just before the shooting. Witnesses told 911 dispatchers that they saw several unidentified people firing shots into the Jeep, police say. Both teenagers, who have not been publicly identified, were taken to the Harborview Medical Center in a private vehicle by people who identified themselves as, quote, CHOP medics. The older boy died several hours later, and police said the 14-year-old remains in critical condition. Detectives searched the vehicle for evidence on Monday morning, but said in a statement that it was clear that the crime scene had been disturbed. Demonstrators have occupied several blocks around the Seattle Police Department's East Precinct for about 2 weeks. Protesters have claimed the shooting unfolded after the vehicle plowed into the CHOP zone and those inside the car started shooting. Those inside the zone said CHAZ security, who are self-appointed and heavily armed, then returned fire. And there's some pretty gruesome images on the Daily Mail's website. Here's a photo. I'll show you this one. There's some inside the car pictures that I'm not going to show on this Periscope, but I'll show you this one that you can see here. I was in these porta potties, using these, not too long ago. I was right in there. I was right in those porta potties. I was right in there. I was right next to where this was. The police are there now. Other evidence. Another photo of the SUV and the porta potties you can see behind. Some of the tent city that's set up. This is the precinct, by the way. This boarded up in the background is the precinct. This is the precinct. This is the East Police Precinct. So this actually happened right outside of the police station. That actually is the police station right there, where they were. I think I'm looking at that right. Yeah, that's the police station that's boarded up. You can see the shots into the back of the SUV right there and there. You know, I'm speculating, but that looks like 7.62 to me. That looks like 7.62 size. I don't know if anyone else is looking at this with a military background or a gun background, but yeah, that to me looks like 7.62 bullet size. You can see here, there's a bumper. Here's some of the road. So this might be the No Cop Co-op, where they've moved it to. FTP, of course, in the background. And those porta potties again. Here's a picture of some of the CHAZ security guys. You've seen these photos of them before. I want to be clear, this is not necessarily a photo of last night. This is a photo that was taken earlier in the CHAZ situation. In fact, this is down the hill from where the police precinct is. The East Precinct is actually up here, so it's up the hill. This is just an earlier photo of some of the security guys. Here's another photo that's been making the rounds of one of the security guys there. It's from earlier in the week when they tried to dismantle all this. They tried to shut it down, and protesters refused to allow it. So they ended up backing off. So here's some more photos of this is the East Precinct, the tent city that's been set up. There's a sign up now. I hadn't seen this one when I was there, but this says Trump free zone, no Russian agent provocateurs here. So I'm not sure what that means. See some other stuff in the background. They've changed it from the Seattle Police Department to the Seattle People's Department. There's just a map of the overall area. So that's what we know so far, folks. For everyone who's been following my coverage of CHAZ, of the Autonomous Zone, my 72 hours undercover there, the first thing that I said, that I implored Mayor Jenny Durkin when I got out of there, and there's literally a video of me walking through the airport on live stream, just imploring, I said, please shut this down. Please shut this down. Please shut this down before someone is seriously hurt. Please. Please shut it down. I said that 2 weeks ago. Since I said shut this down, there have been 5 shootings in the Autonomous Zone and at least 2 murders or 2 deaths. Well, let's say 2 deaths, because it hasn't been ruled it's a homicide, but it hasn't been ruled a murder yet. So we'll say 2 deaths. 5 shootings, 2 deaths inside the Autonomous Zone. This is a place where this guy CHAZ was running around saying that he was going to take care of things. This is a place where even Fox News, remember Fox News, of all people, had a reporter there who was saying that the whole thing was peaceful and safe. But that reporter didn't go out at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning when this took place. That's when I was out there. That's when many journalists were out there late at night showing people what was actually going on. Other reporters, mainstream reporters, hung out during the daytime, brought their cameras with them. People knew to not do this kind of stuff when those cameras were on. So they didn't do it. You go late night. That's an interesting point. Somebody pointed out that if this was an AK-47, didn't we see CHAZ with an AK-47 there? I don't know. I wasn't there last night. I don't know. But I do know that there have been videos showing CHAZ with an AK-47, which would be 7.62. There's no information that CHAZ was there that night. But we do know that CHAZ specifically supported the security, the quote unquote private security efforts of this Autonomous Zone, that CHAZ was seen handing out guns, that CHAZ has been completely supportive of the Autonomous Zone's right to be in place and has not spoken up against the violence, has not spoken out in terms of shutting it down and returning to peace, and has not used his platform to shut any of this down. In fact, he's only used his platform to perpetuate this. And at the same time, you've seen members, I personally saw a member of CHAZ's crew assault a journalist by the name of Kalen Dalmeda. When I asked CHAZ if he ordered that, he turned around, turned his back on me and walked away. So now we've seen 5 shootings, 2 deaths since I left there. 5 shootings, 2 deaths. So there you go, folks. This is what happens when you allow your city or any part of your city to be taken over by anarchists. This is what happens when you unwind the rule of law. This is what happens when you remove the thin blue line. The thin blue line, right? No institution in America is perfect because people aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. Chances are that people watching this are not perfect. Look, I'm a Christian, and so we believe that there is no such thing as perfection in this world outside of Christ Jesus, right? That's what we believe. However, that does not mean that things cannot be good, that institutions cannot be good, right? And so when I look at an institution like the police force, which is set up to enforce the rule of law, which is the underpinning of our entire republic, right? This entire republic. That's what we need. That's what we need in this world. And people want to talk about times where the police have made mistakes or times where individual police officers have done the wrong thing. But you can't use that to destroy the police as an institution. And you can't use that to have police abandon an entire area of your city, like we've seen in Seattle, like I saw in Seattle, like we're now watching. These are the type of people that hear a shooting, an active shooter, and they go towards it to defend their communities. These are people like Captain David Dorn. You guys remember Captain David Dorn and his family? He got the phone call very late at night, and he's a retired captain. But he got the phone call very late at night about a break-in at the pawn shop, and David Dorn responded. Because that's the kind of man he was. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the police are perfect and everything they do is great, etc., etc. But I'd like to have a conversation about, would you rather live in a world that has a police force or a world that doesn't? Because that's what we're seeing now, right? Isn't that the essential question, right? Isn't that the question about what we're seeing in CHAZ, what the incident that I was involved with on Friday night, St. Louis, you had a couple, a man and a wife, who were defending their property, right? Their private property, right? All of these things happen when the police stand down, when the police go into retreat. Now, I will say, and by the way, complete thank you to the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. Those are the people that actually came in and escorted me out. That's who got me out, all right? Because I wasn't trying to escalate things with the Antifa thugs that were on me. And it was the police that came in and got me out safely without escalating the situation further. But now you got a situation in CHAZ where there are no police. The police couldn't even investigate. Now they're saying they may not be able to investigate the situation because the crime scene had been tampered. That's what Seattle Police Department is saying. The crime scene was tampered. So who tampered with that crime scene before the police got there? All right, this is a huge problem, folks. This is a huge problem. You have a militia group, an anarchist militia group that has taken over several blocks of one of America's largest cities, an autonomous zone in Seattle, and set it up. And now people are dead. People are dead because of that. So you got to shut this down. You got to stop this. And I appreciate the fact that Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best, who I think she's done a fantastic job through all of this. And, hats off to Chief Carmen Best and everything that she's done She's the Seattle police chief, and I think that she's just been a remarkable role model for a lot of people in all of this, because she's in a very tough situation right now where she does. I personally, and I'm going to say this because she can't, I don't feel that she has the support of her mayor. I don't believe that Mayor Jenny Durkan has the back of Police Chief Carmen Best, because I've been watching this situation pretty closely, and Carmen Best has been doing the best that she can with Mayor Durkan, almost seeming like she's trying to stop her every step of the way. And you got to stop this, folks. You got to stop this lawlessness. I don't want to hear about this again going on. All the gun violence that's happening down there. Why? Why do we allow this to continue? Why do we allow this lawlessness to continue in the streets of one of America's biggest cities? One of America's main cities, the largest city in our Pacific Northwest. This information, like, because we live in the information age, because we live in the age of social media, the internet, instantaneous communication via fiber optic cable, all of these images and messages are being broadcast throughout the world. Everyone can see this right now. They can see what's happening in Seattle. They can see the lack of ability of the United States government to stop this lawlessness in the streets. They can all see it. They can all watch it. You think the Chinese are looking at this? Yeah, they are. You think the Russians are looking at this? Yeah, they are. You think the Iranians are looking at this? Yeah, they are. They're looking at this and they're seeing weakness, and they're seeing vulnerability. And they're saying maybe America is a paper tiger now. So as America looks weak on the world stage, then are these adversaries going to start stepping up around the world? Because it's all connected. Everything affects everything else. Everything affects everything else. And it's on the governor too there, by the way. Governor Inslee, the fact that he's not called in the National Guard of the state of Washington for that situation, it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. It's a disgrace. It's just a disgrace. There isn't really any way to talk about it. You got to take your country back. You got to take your city back, and you have to take your country back. This is not a peaceful protest. There's no time for debate. There is no way to debate. The debate is over. The debate is absolutely over. It's completely over. You allowed militants, anarchist militants, to storm a police precinct. And look at how disgraceful the media was throughout all of this, telling us that it was peaceful, telling us that they were just there as First Amendment protected protests. No, excuse me, the First Amendment, if you need to look at it again, please go look at it, because it says peaceful assembly. The First Amendment says peaceful assembly. It does not give you the right to use violence. It does not give you the right to storm police stations. It does not give you the right to trespass on people's private property, to break down gates in St. Louis. No, First Amendment does not give you those rights. People who wrote it very carefully. And those words mattered. Those words absolutely mattered, because they said peacefully assemble. Peacefully. This is why we have a National Guard, is to take care of this sort of thing. Clean it up. Go there at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, whatever time it takes. Go in there, clean it up, and say, this is done. You guys saw that energy last week. That local guy who was in there throwing throwing over the tables, right? Remember, he was turning over the tables? Remember that energy? That's what the local residents of Seattle are thinking about. That's the point that they're at. That's the point that they're at. There's no goodwill left for CHAZ. None whatsoever. Yeah, there was some at the beginning, that's for sure. And there was a chimera situation going on. But I warned specifically, very specifically, that do not be fooled by what goes on only during the daytime, because you are overlooking the anarchy, the violence, and the lawlessness that are taking place at night. You're completely overlooking that because you are being sucked in by the propaganda of the daytime peaceful protesters who are there, but you're missing the fact that they're kicking out dissidents, they're being violent to street preachers, Christian street preachers. You see them in every city. These guys are peaceful, they're not harming anyone. First Amendment, they have a First Amendment right to be in that park just as much as you do. A Christian street preacher has just as much of a First Amendment right to be in a public park as does a reporter, as does a journalist, right? We saw, what city was it? Was it Lexington? I believe it was Lexington, Kentucky, where a journalist, a photojournalist, was murdered at one of these things recently, over the weekend. Where's his First Amendment? Where's his right to self-defense? Kentucky. Right? And so, it was Saturday. It was Louisville. It was Louisville. Not Lexington, it was Louisville. Belay my last. It's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. You can't pick and choose who gets to follow the law and who doesn't. You don't get to pick and choose who's exempt from certain laws. We don't get to pick and choose. When it's your job to enforce the law, when it's your job to keep the peace, right? To uphold the rule of law, to uphold our system of government, you don't get to pick and choose because you agree with one side or another. That's not the point of civil rights. That's not how it works. Everyone has to respect everyone else's civil rights. And law enforcement is there to ensure that everyone's rights are upheld, number one, and then number two, that everyone is safe, that everyone is done safely. And people are dying. People are dying. The shootings are continuing. There's now at least 2 deaths from this thing. And Mayor Jenny Durkin, completely AWOL. No, I've said in the past, and I honestly don't even necessarily think that I say this facetiously, that in a serious country, Mayor Jenny Durkin would have been arrested by now. She would have been arrested by now. Dereliction of duty. Deprivation of rights under color of law. What about the rights of the residents of that area, the people who live there, the residential communities, the people who pay their taxes, pay a lot of money for those apartments there in Capitol Hill, Seattle? What about their civil rights? What about the rights of the business owners that serve that community, that are part of that community, that have been broken into, have had their stuff stolen, and have no recourse, or at least no immediate recourse, because the police aren't there anymore? So I don't know. I'm just saying that we've seen lawsuits against and charges brought in the past in these cases, and I just don't understand why that couldn't be brought against Mayor Durkin, because it's gone absolutely out of control. It's gone absolutely out of control. And remember, it's just property. Oh, it's just property. Well, now it's just people. Well, now it's just people. Yeah, but they were. Stop. You got to stop. You don't get to pick and choose. You do not get to pick and choose which laws you enforce and which laws you don't. You don't get to pick and choose and grant some sort of immunity to a group of people just because you agree with their political agenda. It doesn't work that way. Not in this system. That's not the kind of country that we live in, and that's not the kind of country that I personally think that anybody should be living in. Because when you start picking one political agenda and saying that people that ascribe to it don't have to worry about laws anymore, that's a very, very dangerous notion. It's an extremely dangerous notion. And I think you've got people, what you've got are people that are exploiting the goodwill that's out there for this situation. But I even think that has reached a tipping point. We're now at a tipping point. We're now at a tipping point with these anti-police protests where it's just become anti-police protests. And we're at a tipping point where, quite frankly, I think that public opinion is now, if you look it up, the majority is against them. If you look it up, I would think that certainly in areas like this, like CHAZ, where people are now going to start siding with the police. People are now going to start siding with, go look up how many people actually want to defund the police. Right? Go look this up. Find the most, left-wing, liberal, outlet that's out there, and you won't find a majority of people saying anywhere that they want to defund the police force. You won't find it. CHAZ got to be shut down. Please, Mayor Jenny Durkin, Governor Inslee, shut this down. Allow the police to go back to their precinct. Those people in the tents, they can go to Cal Anderson Park. They can set up their tent city. They can set up their stage. They can have their microphones. And they can protest all day long, peacefully in the park. It's right there across the street. Give them the park. But put the police force back in that precinct and do it now.